Okay, you're good to go.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I expect some more will probably join a little late. I think it's Abby. Is it school vacation in New Hampshire?
No, it's Massachusetts, and then New Hampshire's next week.
New Hampshire's next week. So welcome to the third session of this parent webinar. I wanted to show you the email that went out. COVID and Beyond, Raising Kids in the Digital Age, a mental health webinar series. The first two, these links will go in. If you want to see the first one, Elephants and Icebergs, the second one, Abby's going to post these links right into the chat. And the one tonight is called Listen. And I just want to bore you to death and read these three paragraphs. What tonight is about. There are both external and internal narratives that contribute to kids' anxiety. The external narrative is the overwhelming tragedy list, the scary societal issues kids hear about every day through their devices, such as climate change, school shootings, a drastically rising suicide rate, racial justice, COVID, massive political rancor, etc. What we found is many adults don't talk about these issues, which adds to children's anxiety. That's the external. That's the barrage coming at kids. The internal dialogue here in the second paragraph is the constant negative self-talk in which so many kids engage. What they tell us is that they're either upset about something that didn't go 100% right in the past or worried about something that's in the future. Where their minds don't reside is in the present. In this session, Jeff and John will talk about these external and internal issues and offer tips on how adults can safely start to talk about these things with their kids. Because for many of the kids, if parents really start to listen, really listen without judgment, that can do a lot to help their children feel better, and so on. So those links will go into the chat. Zoom is an odd place to have a seminar. If you can turn your cameras on so we can see. Thank you, Maria Fawcett. It would be helpful to be able to see folks and interact a little bit. So we'll save the last 15 or 20 minutes to certainly do that. And we have one guest speaker and expecting a second. Master Owen Morrissey looks to be in his bedroom. Owen, how are you tonight?
I'm good, Jeff. How are you?
Good. So Owen's going to talk about a little bit, I think we'll set him up a little bit about the stressors, what it's like to be an 18, 19-year-old guy today, and more importantly, how parents can help by really listening. And that's going to be the focus of the evening, really listening to your kids and having difficult conversations. And we're going to get into that some more. I just want to close this chat because I'm getting distracted. And I have this outline that I'm going to be referring to. And this quote was shared with me by a soccer guy at Colgate from Matthew McConaughey. Wrote this book called Green Lights, which seems to be popular with younger people, a group of which I'm not a member. But Matthew McConaughey writes, as the noise decreases, the signals become clearer. We can hear ourselves again. Time alone simplifies the heart, allowing us to land on stable feet. Elegant little quote about, in my view, about the bombardment and all the noise that's coming at kids and increasingly at all of us. And we feel very, very strongly that really listening to kids will help them calm down and land on stable feet, and acknowledging what is really a pervasive set of difficult issues. So I want to introduce John Broderick again, and John has some comments and I think some statistics about this external bombardment that's affecting kids. So John, if I may give you the floor.
Sure. Jeff, thank you. And I won't be long, and I don't want to dwell on statistics, but I think it's important to know some of them. And there are a lot of things, a lot of externals, as Jeff pointed out, that affect kids. But two of them that affect kids today were not relevant in the world I'm from, and probably the world these kids' parents are from. And one of those externals is school violence, school shootings in particular. And I just want to share these stats because we all hear about school shootings and we know they happen. It's become a sad part of life, but they do have numbers attached to them. Since the Columbine shooting, which wasn't the first school shooting in America, but it's the first one that got the kind of international attention, and that was in April of 1999. Since April of 1999, there have been 229 school shootings in the United States. 10 of them, by the way, have been in elementary schools, unimaginable. The one we all remember is Sandy Hook in Connecticut. In those 229 school shootings, there have been 304 deaths, the vast majority being kids. But the other number that I think is important, in those 229 school shootings, there were 300,000 kids in those schools who were exposed in a very direct way to the gunshots. And God knows how they're doing, but necessarily we shouldn't assume they're all doing great. Most schools in America, by the way, probably your child's school, has active shooter drills, which on the one hand is wonderful. On the other hand, is pretty alarming. We used to have fire drills when I was a kid. And some of the studies indicate that some kids are having post-traumatic stress just from the drills themselves. In 2020-21, they did a survey in 10 high schools in Los Angeles to ask them about how they're dealing with school shootings and that reality. And in that survey, almost 40% of the kids said they were extremely concerned about it. I wasn't concerned about it at all because it didn't exist. Almost 32% of those kids in that 10 school survey said they were worried about it. And 15% said they were stressed about it. The other external that didn't exist in my childhood, and yours most probably, was climate anxiety, what they now call eco-stress. In 2021, a pretty good study was done of 10,000 kids in 10 countries on Earth to talk to them about climate and how they reacted to it. 60% of those kids in that survey worldwide said they were worried or extremely worried about it. 45% of those kids said that their feelings about climate change, which were often sadness, frustration, anxiety, 45% of the kids said their feelings about climate change impacted their daily lives. I guarantee you, for anyone over the age of 35 listening tonight, that was not true for you. It's increasingly true for your kids. So those are two externals that Jeff referenced in the program tonight. And I just want to put some context to them. They're not necessarily the only externals, or maybe not even the most important, but they are externals that you didn't experience in your childhood. But kids experience it every day. Last thing I want to say on that point, I'll be quiet, is Jeff and I were involved in a podcast within the last month with high school kids. And Jeff asked the kids on that podcast how they were doing with school shootings. And one of the young women, I think was maybe a sophomore in high school, she started to tear up. So you could tell it was pretty close to the surface. I don't think she was expecting the question. And the response to Jeff was, I wonder about it. I wonder if there was a school shooting in my high school, would I have time to text my mother? And what would I tell her, and what could be my last words to my mother? I guarantee you no adult watching this tonight ever had to worry about that. And that kid was not only worried about it, she was almost brought to tears by the thought of it. So I think it's important that we understand that our childhoods, I may be older than everyone on this call tonight, but people younger than me, they could look back and say, oh, it's not my childhood, not my childhood. So when young people talk to us, I think it's so important that we listen and not try to solve every problem for them, but to hear them Yeah, because I think that's maybe the most important thing we can do for young people is to listen to what they're saying. It may be something you think you experienced, but it likely isn't. So I just want to underscore that. I think this topic is so important.
Thank you. Thanks, John. I know I want to give Owen Morrissey a chance to respond. Another young man joined this call, but I don't see Mark. Oh, you are here. I don't see the little box with you. Where are you, Mark?
I'm right here.
Oh, there you go. Obviously,
There you
my
go.
mistake needs to be examined. So, I want to say one more thing about. I want to say one more thing and then let these two young men speak to you. So we have all this external stuff coming at us. I call these elephants. I think the reason these phone calls are difficult is because it's just difficult to acknowledge shootings and eco fears and all of it. It's just hard to talk about. If it were easy to talk about, we'd all be talking about. But the need to let kids talk about how they feel is obvious. So that's the external stuff. The internal stuff that I shared at the beginning, kids are super worried about the results of everything they do. We call it outcome fever, right? So I want to give Mark and Owen a chance to talk about how they feel about all this junk coming at them. I think, Mark, you're a sophomore in college. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And Owen's a senior in high school. How you guys feel about all this stuff that's coming at you? And if you would also comment on what it's like, I call it outcome fever, but how you experience worry, right? How you experience the challenge of just being in the present moment and having fun, right? So if you guys could talk about those two things, am I being clear? The stuff coming at you, and then what it's like to try to just be in the moment and enjoy being a kid. So, Owen, you want to go first and just introduce yourself again a little bit, and that.
Yeah, sure. I'm Owen. I'm from Concord and I'm a senior at Middlesex. I think for me, the biggest thing, like the biggest challenge that we have as young people have to deal with nowadays is, I would definitely say, the phones have had a big impact on us. It's like it's just a constant reminder of comparing yourself to others, whatever you're doing on the phone. And I think we kind of lack like the real intimate connections with each other because of the phones. Because you can just text or call or like Snapchat or whatever all your friends, so you kind of lack that intimate connection. So I think that's definitely a challenge. And then for outcome fever, like not living in the present moment, I definitely think we overthink things a lot as young kids, and like whether the result is going to be good or bad. So I definitely think that's a challenge nowadays.
Can you maybe give an example of the overthinking piece when it comes to your life? Would be at school or sports or social life? Like, how does the overthinking happen in your own head?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a baseball player, so kind of if you step into the box, and I used to, and I still do, overthink everything when you're in the box. And if that's the case, you're not going to succeed. So I think kind of letting go of everything and just being present in the moment, and like the sports, just being present in the play that's happening, and you'll do better because of it, I think.
Owen, when you think about the stuff coming at you, you mentioned the phones. How do you sort of handle the news, be it climate change, political fighting, any of that stuff? How do you relate to that? How do you deal with it?
I mean, for me, this might sound bad, but I try to ignore it. Like I try my best to just kind of live my life as a teenager. I mean, like I'm not going to save the world just by my own self. So I don't know. I just kind of tend to mind my own business, as bad as that might sound. But
yeah, I don't think I mean, that's what 90% of kids, young people I talk to, including college kids,
yeah,
many of them say, I can't handle it. It's just too much. So I choose to.
Yeah, like I just want to, like, me and my friends, most of us always say, like, with all the political stuff that has happened, and not to get too political, but like we kind of just want to be teenagers and mind our own business and like have fun, you know what I mean? So
Mhm. Okay, all right, thanks. Hey, Mark, why don't you take the floor? Can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Mark. I graduated Middlesex in 2020. So I'm in college right now at Lafayette in Easton, PA. And yeah, I mean, I think everything that Owen said was totally right. Like I agree with. I mean, I guess like forever, people already like deal with their own insecurities just by like, how they look and, how they speak or whatever that might be. And then, you add the phones and social media, and now you have like this digital version of yourself that you kind of have to worry about and be like self-conscious about a little bit. So I think it's just kind of like added anxiety that our generation and there's people in general now have to deal with. And then I guess with your second question with the news, I mean, yeah, I feel similar to Owen in a way. It's tough. Like, I'm starting to become more of an adult now, but it's still like, I still want to have fun. I'm in school and live my life. But I mean, I guess I do my best to try to understand it and like try to like like see what's going on and at least like know what's going on. Be like be a human in the world and like be aware of these things. But I mean, I think it's just. Sorry, did I cut out for a second? You can hear me.
You're good.
Yeah, I
Good.
hear
All
you.
right. Sorry. So yeah, no, I think yeah, I just try, be a good person, live my life, but also just really understand what's going on. So
Do you young people, do you feel like you're with your friends, with your peers, teammates and so on? Do you find that young people are talking about any of this stuff in an effective way? The stuff that comes at you, the difficulty of being present and being happy and confident. Are kids talking about it?
yeah, I mean, I definitely. So like for I guess what comes to mind right now is like the Russia situation and stuff like that. So like I think people do mention it. But it's kind of like in a joking way. It's not like I guess with my friends at least, it's not like we're getting into serious political debates per se. But we kind of mention it and we're just like, geez, that's pretty crazy, right? Like, and then it's really, and then we kind of move on type thing. So I guess we acknowledge it. But I I don't think it's like we're debating, at least in my friend group, about like things that go on. So that's just me though. I don't know if
Hey, Mark, can I ask you a question?
for sure.
When I was in college and certainly when I was in high school, my sense was that the adults, whoever they were, kind of they kind of had my back. They were worrying about the big issues. I had to worry about smaller stuff. And I thought they were doing an okay job. Somebody was watching, somebody was reacting.
Right.
But as you look out, I think of the Parkland school shooting and
Mm,
what the kids did and whether they feel that it mattered, or climate change, where everyone talks about it, no one seems to deal with it, and your generation is going to own it. I wonder how you think the adults in the world are doing on the kind of big issues. I never worried about them too much because I kind of assumed that they were dealing with it. I'm not sure I would assume that today, but I wonder what your generation thinks.
no, yeah, that's a good point. I think now, I mean, just because of like access to like more information and like now you can follow your representatives and stuff on social media and whatnot and just keep up. I think a lot more people in my generation are kind of not like, oh, the adults got it, like everything's gonna be fine. It's kind of like, no, like we're gonna think critically about things and criticize our these adults if they're not doing things we like or agree with. So I think I don't do this as much, but just because like I guess that's who I am. I try to like inform myself, but I'm not too outspoken, I guess, on social media per se. But I know a lot of people are who post their beliefs and thoughts and like what they think is right that elected officials or government officials are doing. So yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think there's definitely a shift in how young people just view government now in politics, and they just have more access to information through social media. So yeah.
What would Owen and Mark, what would you guys say to the 20 or so parents that are on here, or to your parents, or to grownups in general, teachers, parents, coaches, politicians? In other words, if you had carte blanche, what do you guys want from the world of adults? What do adults need to do to help out you and your friends and the kids you know? What comes to mind?
I think normalize the tough conversations that like are necessary to like a happy life. Because I think sometimes people tend to ignore the tough conversations because it's just easier to not talk about it. So I think definitely like having those tough conversations with your kids and would go a long way.
So to converse about what's needed to be happy, I mean, what comes to mind? What do you think? What do
Oh,
you think?
just about like either the news or like even like mental health. I think there's a stigma around it that like it's a bad thing or like it's tough to talk about. But I think you definitely need to go ahead and talk about those sort of things with your parents, just to have it out in the open and you're not just keeping it inside for like your entire life.
Yeah, well said,
Yeah.
Mark. Do you have any comment on that? What you'd say to adults?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just like try to be as relatable as possible. I mean, like, everyone was a kid or teenager at one point, and they remember stuff they went through and still go through in terms of like anxiety or just any issues that might persist, whether that be with their peers or school or whatnot. So I would just say like, I think my parents do a pretty good job of this, just like be relatable and talk and like, recognize that you were once a kid and teenager and, you make mistakes and things happen. And I mean, I think it's harder with politicians because, they put on like this persona for the public, but I mean, it'd be great if someone like elected official or someone was like really relatable and just kind of related to some of these things a little more. But I guess some people find them relatable, but for teenagers, I'd say it's different.
So you-
Can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
I've been going around the schools for the last 5 years, talking to thousands of kids from grade 6 through 12. And one of the impressions I leave with almost every school I go to is, as Jeff calls it, outcome fever. I talk to so many kids who tell me that they're not sure they can deal with the pressures they feel, that they're really wrapped around success, whatever that means, that they are kind of afraid to disappoint their parents. And I heard a lot of kids in schools who weren't living their own dream. They're living somebody else's. And I just wonder, I'm not asking about you, but I'm asking about your generation, the kids both, to Owen and to you. Is that something you see and notice?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, I mean, I'm blessed, thankfully. My parents, like, I think do a good job. They're just like, do the best you can. Whatever happens, they know I'm motivated and stuff. They kind of give me free reign, but I do see it in a sense where people's parents do have high expectations for them, and also like I'm a type of person who has high expectations for myself. So I think people can be hard about themselves, but I think it's just important to remember that you're human and it's going to work out. I have an optimistic approach. That's it's all going to work out, and just do the best you can and do everything possible that you can. And like if you know that you did everything possible, then it's kind of all you have at the end of the day. Is you can live with that, and sometimes it'll work out, sometimes it won't. So I think people just have it's hard, I guess, for some kids, like they just have to be realistic and be honest with themselves and I guess that's why I have to try to, I work on, try to do that. I just have to be honest with myself and, know if I want something, I'm going to have to, put the work in and do it. So, I think some people just struggle with that, but I think it's hard also with, like we mentioned, like Owen and I mentioned before, with social media and, all the external factors, like you see, so and so did this or so and so has that, and then that kind of weighs on you. It's like, why am I not at that level yet, or why can't I do that? So again, I think it's just like, you have, I try to remove myself as much as I can from social media, even though it's still a big part of my life, and just try to be honest with myself and work hard and just focus on me. I'd say.
Oh, Mark, thank you. Owen, how about you on that question? Do you know kids in school that are really overly stressed, overly competing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my parents have done a great job of kind of like not putting too much pressure on me in school and in sports and everything. But I definitely have friends that like I hear and can see their parents putting a lot of pressure on them, and that gives them added stress. Because I think there's like a aura or stigma around failure nowadays where like it's not okay to fail. Some like people think that, and parents think that, and like I think we should normalize the idea of failure, because in your failures you're able to, I mean it's cliche, but you're able to like learn from your failures. And I think being able to fail is actually a good thing. So yeah.
I agree with you. Do you think, Owen, do you think that some parents are living kind of vicariously through their children's accomplishments or through their children's sports? Do you see that or experience that anywhere?
Yeah, definitely. As an athlete, I can definitely relate to that, seeing parents kind of being like thinking they did all the work, or just like bragging to other parents about their kids' accomplishments and stuff like that. Which, I mean, the kid was out there doing the work and playing the sport. So, I mean, they really had nothing to do with it. I mean, their support means a lot, but like the athlete's the kind of the one out there succeeding. So I've definitely seen that a lot in parents where they're just
which I assume adds stress to some of those kids.
right. Yeah, no. So if you do fail and your parents basically depend on you to succeed, there's definitely added pressure in that sense.
Mark, you've seen a lot of that too.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think obviously it's as a parent, you want to be proud of your son or daughter, when they succeed and stuff. And I think as they should, and give them encouragement. But I think like certain parents can be extreme and in certain sense, and just make it so much as like they also are succeeding, and it's like it's reflected on them as a parent when their kid succeeds or fails. So I think I think that I do recognize that a lot, and it is what it is. I mean, I think it's like, obviously, like I obviously don't have a child right now, but I would be, happy if they succeed and stuff. But I just think you just can't like really, you can't put yourself too much in their lives. You still have to like let them live their lives, and like, and just kind of let things play out, I'd say. So.
Can you guys stick around till 8 o'clock, or what's your schedule like?
Yeah, I should be good. Should be good.
Yeah, I got nothing but homework, so I don't.
You put that off as long as possible.
What's up?
You put that off as long as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
So I appreciate all your comments, and I'm going to stop by 7:45 to let other folks ask Owen and Mark questions, or we can have a discussion. I just wanted to refer back to my outline here. One, the problem is so pervasive as to be invisible. John and I feel like Paul Revere. I've never been on a horse. I'm not a silversmith, but I'm with kids every day in my life, and I've said this on these calls. Kids are really struggling. So I wrote, we have to become deliberate to put a dent in kids' stress levels, in the outcome fever. And I want to talk right now about how we can do that. Number 2 says holding environment. That was a term coined by a psychiatrist named David Winnicott for when he described what needs to happen in a home with a baby, with a toddler, with a little kid, with a teenager. You just want to create a holding environment that's adequate. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if you think about a mom holding a baby or a dad holding a baby, the holding environment in this culture is in tatters. We've said there's too much coming at kids, from phones to shootings to global warming to eco-fear to pressure to iPhones, all of it, opiates, suicide. And so it's disturbing, but it's there. So how do you create a holding environment in your home, in the vehicle driving kids around, in this busy time famine sort of life that we all lead? It has to be deliberate to put a dent in this. You have to think about this holding environment so that if you now think of the 1 or 2 adults who in your youth made you feel held, right? If you contemplate that right now, from Trish to Amy to Stacy and everybody on this call, I think of my uncle, and whenever I was with my Uncle Murray, I felt like he saw me. I felt held. Kids are missing that, right? If you think about who that person is, we can discuss it at the end, but you as a mom or a dad or a coach or a teacher, you want the kids that you're raising or teaching or coaching to feel like you get them. They're in the holding environment. Makes sense? So I want to dig into how you can really do that. I've written in number 3, apologize. Now that may sound bizarre to you, but I find myself with athletes that I work with in groups of kids that I see, I just want to apologize. And it comes from my heart, and I think kids can feel it. And I say, I'm really sorry. And then I say, why do you guys think I'm apologizing? And kids will say, whatever the latest tragedy is. You feel bad because we're having to see that, and yeah, I feel really bad. I feel really bad. And I think if you try this with your own kids or your students or players, they'll really listen. So apologize. That's my advice. And really listen, right? Device-free rituals. If your kid's over 13 and you say, Timmy, we're going to shut off the phones every Wednesday, the kid's not going to like it. Right? I mean, Owen and Mark, when you were 14, if your mom and dad said, hey, no iPhones Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you wouldn't have been jumping up for joy. But honestly, what would be your reaction if you would have been honest and your parents, Mark, you go first, like, hey, Mark, we're going to shut all the screens off on a regular basis in our home. How do you think you would have reacted to that back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I probably would have been upset a little bit. I mean, I was still am kind of a video game guy and stuff and phones. So yeah, I would have, probably been upset and fought them on it a little bit. But I guess like now, being a little more mature, I still probably question it a little bit, but I'd get it a lot more, and like I probably wouldn't make as big of a deal about it. So.
Owen, you have any response to that idea?
I mean, yeah, this actually kind of sort of used to happen. I would get electronics taken away when I was a young middle schooler, and I mean, I was pretty immature, so I would like sort of throw a fit. Like I always felt that I needed the electronics to kind of connect to my friends and connect to the world, as kind of pathetic as that seems, but it was the truth. But yeah, I think like Mark, I'm much more mature now, so I would probably still be ticked off, but I would understand it.
Right. So I think parents are going to get a fight on that, depending, because I think kids do really believe that this is a flip phone, but that these gizmos, I feel like when you take them away, kids really feel like I can't talk to my friends because they don't pick up a phone and call anybody. Right. And they don't, in COVID, haven't seen it. So it's a dicey area, but I'm putting it down there. Device-free rituals, shut the phones off, listen, apologize, model, I call it analog behavior. Do not be doing your emails when you're talking to your son and daughter. Do not be distracted by the thing in your pocket. Think of that adult that really listened to you. You know, when my Uncle Murray came over to the house, he came to see me. He came to listen to me. He came to teach me. He was this word again. He was deliberate about our relationship. And I think we're all super distracted by devices. So easier said than done. And I said, whom do you remember? Listen and attend like him or her, that individual. 5, identify elephants and gremlins. Elephants are all this external madness. You know, be that relatable adult that Mark Portlock talked about. Like, hey guys, they're not going to enjoy it, and neither are you. I want to talk about what's going on in Ukraine. Oh, Dad, I don't want to talk. No. Bring it close to home. I want to talk about how you're doing. How do you guys feel? How do you really feel about school? How do you feel about the job your dad and I are doing, your mom and I are doing, right? Really, I wrote the word listen with an exclamation point. And then 6, there are 2 more. Gremlins. What are gremlins? Gremlins we all had as kids. I mean, I'm calling you guys, but this isn't middle school, but we all had as kids negative internal dialogue, right? If I went to basketball tryouts, there was probably a voice in my head going, you're going to screw up. But I think the gremlins with which we dealt 20, 30, 40 years ago are much more de minimis and less loud than what kids talk to me about. And we can ask Mark and Owen about gremlins, but ask your kids about, if you want to use that word, gremlin recognition. You try it yourself this week. Write down every negative thought you have during the day. My boss isn't going to like this presentation. My husband's going to be pissed at me because I did X, Y, and Z. And notice the gremlin, the pile up in your head of negative self-talk. Pick up the book, Taming Your Gremlin, which is excellent, by a guy named Rick Carson, right? Pick up that book, take a look at it online if you like. And the other book that my wife Miranda really likes, and I do too, is called Relentless Optimism, which is a sports psychology book based in baseball, but can help young people and ourselves switch our mindsets to positivity, even in the midst of all these elephants. Okay. And the 7th thing, Judge and I are willing to join you with your kids, friends, parents to strategize and create that local holding environment. If you're interested, someone on this call suggested that. If you're interested in talking some more about this, I put my email, my number in the chat. We feel like we're trying to start a movement, and I think Owen said there is a stigma around mental health. There has been in this country. John Broderick talks about it when he talks about the mental health crisis he and his family endured. We have to lift that stigma by modeling the bravery to really talk about what's going on in the lives and the minds and the hearts of kids. So I hope all that makes some sense. I'm looking at a lot of names and not a lot of faces, so it's hard to tell. Yeah.
Can I jump in just for a minute? Because I know we want to have questions, but after 5 years of going to 300 gyms and auditoriums around New England and talking to so many kids who confide, what I've learned from that experience is that these kids are amazing. I love this generation. I mean that. They're smarter than I ever was, and they're more worldly wise. They're more trouble too. And these kids are spending 5 to 9 hours a day in the virtual world, and most of it's not for schoolwork. Vast majority of it's not. And so I think Owen earlier on had said something which has come home to me in spades, which is connecting to other people, other kids, adults. It's just harder now because it's not as genuine, because it's remote. And it's just not the same connection. The other thing I would like to say, without being preachy about it, because I'm not sure I did it all the time either, but my parents did. And that is, they were present for my sister and me. I don't mean they're in the same house or in the same car, but they were present. They were engaged with us, not cross-examining us, not checking our grades every 20 minutes, but they were engaged in our lives, and we felt very supportive. And it's like Jeff said, the holding environment. In my young life, it was not just my parents, but my neighborhood, my friends' parents. I mean, I had so many sets of parents as a kid, and they were all present for us. And I modeled behavior, which is what kids do. And there are a lot of parents today that are troubled about the amount of time their kids spend online, and the parents are spending just as much time. So, what is the message to kids? We need to get back to where we can really connect. So I love what Jeff's doing with the Reconnection Project to connect again at a very base level. So you know that the person you're talking to cares about you. Jeff and I were on a podcast recently with high school kids, and we asked how many of them had a trusting adult in their life that they could confide in. And the answer seemed to be around 15 or 20%. That's a problem. And I guarantee you the other 80% think they're trusting adults and probably are, but they're not perceived that way. There's a lot of stuff that gets in the way of being present for our kids and listening to our kids. Kids will tell me stuff in a gymnasium. Sometimes they say, I'm going to tell you something. I can't tell this to my parents. That's concerning, but it's the reality, and it's not an occasional disclosure. I hear it a lot. I hear it a lot. I hear it from athletes. I hear it from sixth grade kids. So something's not right, and something could change that would make it easier to do. And oftentimes the kids I hug are having problems, but I'm convinced the kids are not the problem. The kids are just growing up in a petri dish, unlike the one I grew up in. And we need to realize that the childhood and the young lives of these kids are not the same as the ones we had. They're just not the same. And to assume that you made it through and they'll make it through, or try to tell them that what they're experiencing is really not what they think they're experiencing, it means you're not listening carefully, because they're experiencing stuff you never had to deal with. And as Mark was saying, the social media being judged, being shown images all the time, wondering whether you're good enough, whether that's your life, whether it should be your life. I didn't have to deal with that. Most parents didn't either. So I think we need to really listen to what these kids are saying, because they're really smart and they're really honest. And the young people on this call tonight, and Mark and Owen, I just can't tell you how much I admire that you're doing this, because it's really brave to do it. And so helpful to so many people.
Thanks, John. Let me share a comment somebody made to me in the chat. Having these brave conversations with kids and talking about a mess of stuff that's really upsetting is hard. There's safety in numbers, and that's why I'd love you to get in touch with us. But if so listening without judgment is an important component of really listening. And I think we're all fundamentally distracted by our devices, and we're pressured by a variety of factors that 30 years ago, none of us dealt with. So we got to slow ourselves down. There's safety in numbers. If you're interested in this conversation, please get in touch with us. I want to open this up to anybody, and I'd love you to turn your cameras on. I know Trish was cooking dinner. I'm sure it's beautiful to see. There she is. But if you turn your cameras on and enjoy a conversation, albeit not in the room, but on Zoom, if anybody has questions for Mark or Owen or John or me or each other, or comments, we would love to have you jump in at this time. So who will start the discussion?
I will start the discussion. I'm Maria Fawcett. I have a daughter in Middlesex, she's a junior. And I feel like I completely agree with what I have been listening. And I'm sorry about my accent. I'm from Argentina, so let me know if you don't understand some questions.
I'm sorry about my Boston accent. Fenway Park. So I'd rather hear your accent.
Good. I agree with everything that I hear, and I think the main issue is that there is too much noise. I completely agree with the phrase that you put out, you opened this conversation. And because of that noise, the kids are very confused and they cannot live in the moment. And as a parent, I'm trying to create those rituals of like a device free. But I don't feel like as parents, we have the support that we need in the schools. I don't see the schools, and probably Mark and what's the
Owen.
yes,
Owen.
Owen don't like what I'm going to say, but I feel like the schools should have like more like time for the kids not to use their device. We have a kid in another school, and it's a device-free school, and he's only 14 years old, and it's amazing how much present he is in his classes, how much he's present with his friends. And instead of being on a device, they are like running outside, which I love that. So as a parent, we are trying to do our part, but I think that the schools also should help us like somehow to say like, okay, well, we are at school, we are going to tell the kids to put their phone in some place and be present to create that relationship or friendship that Owen was mentioned, because they will feel forced. At the beginning, probably there is a huge resistance, not only from the kids, but some parents will probably think that they don't agree with the rule. But I think that we should try. And I will be so happy if the schools help us parents to deal with that, because it's a real problem. And I think that the kids also feel that pressure, that they need to be connected. They need to be listening to things that maybe they are not prepared to listen. And it's a huge, a heavy weight for them, but they are not ready to, they are not mature enough to see how they can solve this. So I think that if we parents and schools work together, we can help them to accomplish what they are missing at this moment. So that's my...
Yeah, no, I'm confident everybody's agreeing with you. The notion of parents and educators collaborating is in the dustbin a little bit. And we need to, in my opinion, we need to collaborate with educators around all these issues. Technology has overtaken our lives. There's just no denying it. And it is not helping kids. It is not in general helping kids. It is not. So, but the broader issue of how do we collaborate with our teachers in the middle of all this noise needs to be examined. I know a lot of educators who are exhausted, capital E, exhausted. And parents are stressed to the max. So it's easy to say, let's collaborate. I think it's hard to do. Thank you, Maria. Are there reactions to Maria or other things? David Burrell has raised his hand. Yes, David, go ahead.
How are you, sir?
Good, sir. How are you?
Well, I'm in my car, so I don't have my my camera, and I apologize. To the point about technology and constant access to it, what about turning the Wi-Fi off at 11 o'clock at night?
Sounds good to me. How would the people in your home react to that, Dave?
Well, I do that.
And how's it gone? How old are your kids, Dave?
I have a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old.
So they should be asleep anyways, right, at 11?
I mean, you'll find a lot of times, you know, kids don't go to sleep at 11, or they figure out a way around it.
How has the battle gone? Listen, kids, I'm shutting it down. How has it gone in your house?
Well, it's challenging, and I actually removed myself from it with some dissembling, which I actually have. I've got a physical timer on a router, and it turns it off for everyone. Which,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
You know, I mean, that means that no one can necessarily stream a movie or anything else. You know, on weekends, you can change it, but I think that Wi-Fi access at night's a really rough. It's a rough thing. You know, it's a readily available drug that kids who need sleep don't need.
I couldn't agree with you more. I see a lot of exhausted kids anyway, anybody want to respond to David in his car? I feel like a talk show host. Anybody, any want piggyback off of that?
Yeah, I just want to jump in briefly, Jeff, to say, David, you're my hero. That's pretty extraordinary. If people realize, parents, how many kids have their cell phones on or streaming after midnight on a school night, they'd probably be shocked. And, the national stats say that 80% of kids in school don't get 8 hours of sleep a night. And my guess is it's at least 80%. And being fatigued is not usually something that leads to success, but it can lead to anxiety and depression. So I agree with Jeff. We need to get control of technology. I'm not anti-tech by any means. I'm not trying to go back to 1950, but I guarantee you in 20 years, someone will do the definitive study on technology, personal technology at the turn of the 20th century, and they'll come to the conclusion that we didn't do it right, that we didn't control it enough, that we didn't use it as it should have been used. And it's going to take parents to say that's where the line is. So I really admire David. That's not easy to do, easy to say, but really hard to do. But it will matter, I think.
Jeff, you're muted.
You can't read my lips anymore, Abby? I'm sorry. I
Sorry.
said, does anybody want to jump in on, I so often mute myself, as my wife knows. Does anyone else want to jump in and piggyback on that? Technology, saying no to kids, setting limits?
I'll jump in.
Please.
I mean, I've harped on it earlier, but just I think because of the technology and our frequent use of it, there's kind of like a lack of adventure with the kids, and we're not really going out and experiencing the world, and we're experiencing the world like through our phones, I want to say. And there's no like, yeah, I don't know, there's no adventure like let's go on a hike in the woods or something like that. It's let's just all sit around and talk, and every 10 or 15 minutes go on our phones and then talk about this other thing. And yeah, I don't know.
How do you think this lack of adventure is affecting you and your buddies?
I mean, I think we would just have a lot more fun because there is some moments where we'll go on a trip to one of my buddies has a house in like Nantucket or something, and we won't really use our phones, and we'll be like out on the beach and then like go exploring somewhere and just like kind of be kids in the old days, I guess. I don't want to make you guys feel old, but
You already feel old, Owen. Don't worry about it.
But
Myself.
yeah, no, it's just like more adventurous, and you have more fun, and you can experience new things instead of just like looking at, I don't know, the Bruins score and the ESPN app on your phone and stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah, there's no question. Oh, technology's overtaken the generation, and it has blocked kids' experience. 50 to 60% of the kids I've interacted with on 300-400 sports teams do not know that the sun comes up in the east. At least half do not know. Now, that scares me, but people say to me, Jeff, our parents, we listened to the Beatles and they thought it was hell on earth. That may be, but I think the stakes are much higher. The numbers bear it out. Kids are struggling. And being disconnected from your imagination and all that nature and adventure and independence and intestinal fortitude creates, that's my greatest sorrow, that these kids are not being shown to the door of adventure and shown to the door of finding their own voice. It's my greatest sorrow. And I'm just pleased that we're having these conversations. Who wants to jump in?
I just want to say briefly, one of the reasons for that, Jeff, it's not just the young people who are kind of addicted to that technology, which keeps them maybe indoors, but it's their parents. Parents are in touch with their kids because they can be multiple times a day. And that doesn't give you a sense of independence or self-worth or that you're trusted. And a lot of people don't want young people, especially, to be out and about because they're scared to death for their safety. And all the national studies now show that you're safer now than you were 30 years ago. But you wouldn't know that the way kids are treated. And I've talked to some kids whose mother or father called them 10 times a day to check in. At one private school I went to, I said to the principal, "What do you do with technology here?" And he said, "Well, we don't let kids use it in the classroom." I said, "Well, that's good." He said, "Yeah, but the parents are texting them constantly. So the kids are using it to respond to the text of their parents." He said, "It's easier to control the kids on technology than to control their parents." I mean, that's part of it too.
Well, something has shifted where parents are parenting from fear. I got to text my kid. I got to find out where he is. Did he get to his buddy's house? Okay. That doesn't inspire trust, obviously. But we've been it's not because of ill will. We've been overtaken by this stuff. I've received the 3-minute warning. Does anyone have any questions or feedback for these two young men, for Owen and Mark, before this closes down? It's a long silence, boys. Nothing, huh? Well, I want to thank you kids for coming. It means a lot. I'm going to try to get young people on this. Oh, it's in the chat. Thank you very much. This was great. The next webinar, Abby's posted links. It's all in the chat. My contact info is in the chat. Any final comments from Madge and Caroline and Stacy and Amy and all these folks? Ganesh, if I'm mispronouncing your name. Kim and John. Paula, anybody? This is my teacher, Trish. I'm calling your names, giving you an opportunity. Jump
Hi
in.
there.
Yeah,
I'll jump in.
please.
My name is Paula Tancock Burrell. I have 2 boys, and I'm married to David Burrell, who was in the car.
And you want to watch a movie at 11:15 and the man has shut off the internet.
That's right. That's right. Sometimes I find it frustrating myself. But we're really trying to make a conscious effort as parents to model the good behavior. It's tricky, though, because so much comes through the phone and so much gets done through the phone or the device now. Society has made it very hard for us to stay off our devices too. But certainly we try very hard to have meals without phones, no devices at the table. The Wi-Fi gets shut off. And for the most part, we had quite a bit of kickback when they were younger, but it's just like anything, the rituals and the routines, they eventually kick in. And as they've gotten more mature, they understand. We have one son who plays more video games than the other. And he is, as he's gotten older, and we got through COVID, because COVID, of course, sent everyone into their phones and their computers. We're very proud to say that he pulled back. He realized that he was missing out and that he was not focused on the things he needed to be. So with a little outside intervention, we managed to get things back under control, and we're super proud of him. So I think it's a really hard battle. I think that what you guys have been messaging is super important. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity for parents to sort of sit down and think about these things and maybe reassess. So I thank all of you for this amazing forum, because I've now hopped on to all 3 and the message is loud and clear, and I completely agree. And so thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Paul. Appreciate it. It is 8 o'clock. The siren in the Zoom rink is buzzing. I think we give Abby the final word because she's the producer.
Final word. Thank you all for joining.
And Trish, if you want to stay on, we'll discuss what we were talking about. Thank you all so much for coming. There'll be another one in 2 weeks. You should be seeing the email from your from whatever source you've been getting it. And Owen and Mark, thank you very much, boys.